Well, good evening, everybody, and welcome once again to a Tuesday evening quiz here at PubQuiz60. Been a fair few months since the last quiz, back when we were all locked down together and stuck in our homes, and while some things have definitely changed since then, some things remain the same. And one of those is the format of this quiz. As a reminder, there are 5 rounds of 10 questions, worth a point each, but each round also has a bonus question worth 2 points. So it's 60 points in total available. Each round also has a minute's holding time at the end of it, so don't worry if you don't get an answer straight away, just take a note, you can come back to it. We'll do the first 3 rounds, then mark those before we have a 5-minute comfort break, when you can go and get a drink, let the dog out, whatever you need to do. We'll then pop back for the final 2 rounds before marking these and seeing who has won. I'll leave the chat comments box up throughout the quiz for you to pop up your scores or general comments, but please don't put the answers up there, just in case anyone is still thinking. At the end of the day, and in the spirit of the old quizzes, do remember that this is just for fun, and that any typos, mistakes, or glaring inaccuracies should be laughed off and forgiven. Right, anyway, that's enough chitter-chatter. Let's start, as ever, with round 1, which this week is TV and film. And on to question 1, which is, who directed Titanic, Avatar, and The Terminator? Who directed Titanic, Avatar, and The Terminator? Now, just as a reminder, I won't be going over the questions again at the end, so if you're not sure about anything, just jot them down at the side. You can come back to that later. But there is a minute's thinking time at the end of this and every round. So question 1, who directed Titanic, Avatar, and The Terminator? Question 2, what does Tom Hanks compare life to in Forrest Gump? What does Tom Hanks compare life to in Forrest Gump? Again, just a little bit of thinking time on each question. Be quite quick fire this. Usually the quiz takes about an hour in total, so we'll try and keep to that. Question 3. What is the name of the fictional land where the Disney film Frozen takes place? What is the name of the fictional land where the Disney film Frozen takes place? And as ever on these as well, let's not be too critical with spellings. So if when it comes to marking it looks close, then that's good enough for me and good enough for everyone, I hope. Moving on to question 4. Where were the Lord of the Rings movies filmed? Where were the Lord of the Rings movies filmed? Now moving on, question 5 out of 10 in the first round, and it is, Doc, grumpy, happy, sleepy, bashful and dopey, but who is the missing dwarf? Doc, grumpy, happy, sleepy, bashful and dopey, but who is the missing dwarf? Now in each round there are 10 questions, each worth a point each, but there's also a bonus question that always comes after question 5, as in previous quizzes, and that's worth 2 points. So let's see what the bonus question is in this round.
Ho, 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 ho! Merry Christmas!
And there's Santa coming up with his Christmas bonus question. And for this one is, what year was this film first released? That's the film in question 5. What year was this film first released? Now, it'll be 1 point if you get the decade right, but you'll get the 2 points if you get the exact year. So what year was this film first released? 1 point for the decade, and 2 if you get the exact year. So again, a possible 2 points for that bonus one, but now we'll move back onto the single point questions again, and question 6, which is, which actor links the films The Da Vinci Code, X-Men, and the TV soap Coronation Street? Which actor links the films The Da Vinci Code, X-Men, and the TV soap Coronation Street? As ever, if you're not sure, then just jot a note down. You can always come back to it at the minute's thinking time at the end of this round. Four more questions remaining in the first round, TV and film. And the seventh question is, name the Stanley Kubrick film from 1964 in which Peter Sellers plays three different characters. Name the Stanley Kubrick film from 1964 in which Peter Sellers plays three different characters. Just three more questions remaining in this round. And we move on to question 8. In TV and film, on which classic game show might you have heard, "Can I have a pea, please, Bob"? On which classic game show might you have heard, "Can I have a pea, please, Bob"? Just two more questions in this round, and then again we'll have a minute's thinking time just for you to finalise your answers. There's a minute's thinking time at the end of all rounds. And we'll move on to the penultimate question in TV and film, question 9, which is, in which fictional town was the sitcom Dad's Army set? In which fictional town was the sitcom Dad's Army set? Again on this, spelling not overly important. If you get the gist of it, I think that's right for the points. Again, at the end of the day, it's just for fun, this quiz. And that brings us to the last question in the first round TV and film, which is question 10, and it is, Bill Murray plays successful TV executive Frank Cross in which modern take on Charles Dickens's A Christmas Carol? Bill Murray plays successful TV executive Frank Cross in which modern take on Charles Dickens' A Christmas Carol? So that brings us to the end of round 1, which is a TV and film. What we'll do now is we'll have a little minute's thinking time, so I'll pop a minute on the clock just for you to finalise any answers you're unsure of before we move on to round 2. So we'll have a minute on the clock starting now. Okay, so that's a minute's thinking time there for round 1, TV and film. But now we'll move on to round 2, which this week is food and drink. And question 1 in food and drink is, Oysters Kilpatrick is a dish best associated with which country? Oysters Kilpatrick is a dish best associated with which country? And as for the last round, we won't be going through the questions at the end, so if you're unsure of any, do take a note, jot it down at the side of your paper. There will be a minute's thinking time at the end of the round. That was question 1. Moving on to question 2. A woo-woo is a cocktail of cranberry juice, peach schnapps, and which other spirit? A woo-woo is a cocktail of cranberry juice, peach schnapps, and which other spirit? Same format in this round as well, 10 questions. There will be a bonus question after question 5. So that was question 2. Moving on, question 3. Autumn King, Figaro, and Saint Valery are all varieties of which vegetable? Autumn King, Figaro, and Saint Valery are all varieties of which vegetable? That's 3 questions down. On to question 4, which is, what is the main seasoning of goulash, one of the national dishes of Hungary? What is the main seasoning of goulash, one of the national dishes of Hungary? So that was question 4. Now we'll move on to question 5, which will have a bonus question after it and related to it. And question 5 is, which MasterChef presenter was formerly a greengrocer? Which MasterChef presenter was formerly a greengrocer? So that's question 5, which is worth 1 point, but then we move on to the bonus question, question 6, which is worth 2 points.
Ho, 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 ho! Merry Christmas!
And there's Santa coming in with his Christmas bonus again. So related to question 5, how old is this presenter? How old is the presenter mentioned in question 5? Are they 57, 58 or 59? 2 points for this. So that's the bonus question, like I say, worth 2 points, but now we'll move back on to question 6, which is again just worth 1 point. And question 6 is, what is the main ingredient in the Eastern European soup borscht? What is the main ingredient in the Eastern European soup borscht? Again, just 1 point for this. 2 points for the bonus, 1 point for all other questions, so 12 points in a round. 60 points in total across the 5 rounds. Four questions remaining in this second round, food and drink. And question 7 is, from which city do gumbo and jambalaya originate? From which city do gumbo and jambalaya originate? Minutes thinking time again, just to remind you at the end of this round as well, so if you're unsure, just make a little note on the side of your paper. But moving on, 3 questions remaining. Question 8. Heston Blumenthal's restaurant in Bray holds 3 Michelin stars, but what is the restaurant called? Heston Blumenthal's restaurant in Bray holds 3 Michelin stars, but what is the restaurant called? So just 2 questions remaining in this round on food and drink. So we go on to the penultimate, question 9, which is, how many standard bottles of champagne fit in a Nebuchadnezzar? How many standard bottles of champagne fit in a Nebuchadnezzar? And that takes us on to the last question, question 10 in food and drink, which is, which fast food franchise has the largest number of restaurants in the world? Which fast food franchise has the largest number of restaurants in the world? So that brings us to the end of round 2, the food and drink round. And again, we'll have a minute's thinking time now just for you to finalise any answers you're unsure of on this round or on the earlier TV and film round. But we'll have a minute on the clock starting now, and then we'll come back into round 3. Right, so that's your minute's thinking time done there for the food and drink round. We'll now move on to round 3, which is the last round before we mark the first 3 rounds and then have a break. So this is the last round, 10 more questions, then we'll mark the first 3 rounds and then have a little 5-minute break. And round 3 this week is Christmas number ones. Now, in each of the questions, you'll see the initials of a Christmas number one song, as well as the initials of the band, and also as a clue, you'll see the year that was the Christmas number one spot. So it's 10 questions again, and there's a bonus question in the middle of those. So let's get on without further ado into question number 1. Question number 1. Who was the Christmas number one in 1972? The artist J.O. and the song LHLFL. So this is the Christmas number one from 1972, and the format is the artist at the top, so in this instance J.O., and the song in the middle, LHLFL. Now again, I won't be repeating these as well, so if you do need to jot them down, if you're unsure, there will be a minute's thinking time at the end before we mark the first 3 rounds. Or you can take a picture on your phone or screen grab, but I won't be going back over them after I've gone through all 10. So that was question number 1, the 1972 Christmas number 1. Question number 2. 2009, the artist RATM and the song KITNO. Who was the Christmas number 1 slot holder in 2009? RATM with KITNO. Quite long answers, some of these, a lot of words in them, so a little bit more time just to get those written down. Before we move on to the third Christmas number 1 question, which is, who was Christmas number 1 in 1988? It was C.R. with the song M.A.W. C.R. with the song M.A.W. And that was back in 1988. Just a little bit more thinking on that one. Before we move on now to question 4, the fourth number 1, back from 1963. The artist T.B. and the song IWTHYH. T.B. with IWTHYH. No half points in this as well. You need to get the artist and the song for the 1 point. So that's 4 questions down. Then we'll move on to question 5, which as ever is worth 1 point, but has a bonus question related to it worth 2. So let's see what the 1 point question is for question 5. And it's the Christmas number 1 in 1975, Q with BR. Q with BR, back in 1975. So that's the 1 point answer there. But then there's also a bonus question related to that, which is...
Ho, 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 ho! Merry Christmas!
So that's Santa's bonus question here for 2 points. What other year did this have the Christmas number 1 slot? So the song mentioned in question 5, what other year did this have the Christmas number 1 slot? 2 points if you can get the year. Again, if you're unsure of any of these, do jot them down or take a picture, whatever's needed. There is a minute's thinking time at the end before we go through the marking of the first 3 rounds. But moving on, we'll go back to the 1 point questions. So question 6 for 1 point again. Who was Christmas number 1 in 1981? It was THL with DYWM. THL with DYWM, way back in 1981. Four more questions in this round. So we go to question 7, which is, who had the number 1 slot in 1971? It was BH with the song E, TFMITW. Back in 1971, the number 1 at Christmas was BH with E, TFMITW. That's quite a long one there, quite a lot of words in there, so I'll leave a little bit more time just for you to confirm and write that down. Again, both the artist and the song title needed for the 1 point. No halves in this. 1 point or nothing. Just 3 more questions in the Christmas number 1s round. And number 8 is, who was number 1 in 1987? It's PSB with the song AOMM. Back in 1987, the Christmas number 1, PSB, with the song AOMM. Just 2 more Christmas number 1s to go. And question 9, the penultimate, is, back in 1996, the band or artist SG and the song TBO. Back in 1996, Christmas number 1 was by SG and the song TBO. And that neatly takes us to the last question, question 10 in the Christmas number 1 round. And it's the Christmas number 1 back in 1984 by BA and the song titled DTKIC. Back in 1984, who had the Christmas number 1 slot with DTKIC? DTKIC by BA. Again, just a long title there, so give you a second to write it down. A point for the full answer, which is the artist and the song. No half points. So that brings us to the end of round 3, the Christmas number 1s round. What we'll do again now is just have a minute's thinking time just for you to finalise answers on that round, but also on the TV and film and food and drinks round, if you had any missing from those, before we come back and we mark the first 3 rounds. We'll then have a little 5-minute break before we come back and do the final 2 rounds. But for the moment, we'll have a minute on the clock for final thinking. A minute on the clock, starting now. Okay, so that concludes the final thinking time for the first 3 rounds. Hopefully you've got answers in for all the questions. So just before we have a quick 5-minute break, we'll quickly mark these first 3 rounds. So let's go back to round 1, which was TV and film. And the first question was, who directed Titanic, Avatar and The Terminator? Well, that was James Cameron. With both Titanic and Avatar grossing over $2 billion at the box office. Question 2, what does Tom Hanks compare life to in Forrest Gump? Well, that was a box of chocolates. Question 3, what is the name of the fictional land where the Disney film Frozen takes place? That is Arendelle. Question 4, where were the Lord of the Rings movie filmed? Well, they were filmed across about 150 locations in North and South Island of New Zealand. Question 5. Doc, Grumpy, Happy, Sleepy, Bashful and Dopey, but who is the missing dwarf? Well, the missing dwarf from that list is Sneezy. So all the standard questions worth 1 point, but after question 5, we do have the bonus question, which is worth 2 points. And the bonus question was, what year was this film first released? You get a point for the decade and 2 for the exact year. Well, it was released actually on this day, the 21st of December, in 1937. 84 years ago. So, 1 point if you said the 1930s, 2 points if you got 1937 exactly. So 2 points available there. Back to the single point ones. Question 6. Which actor links the films Da Vinci Code, X-Men and the TV soap Coronation Street? Well, that is the 82-year-old Ian McKellen. Question 7. Name the Stanley Kubrick film from 1964 in which Peter Sellers plays 3 different characters. Well, that was Dr. Strangelove, in which he played 3 different characters. And one of those characters was the President of the US, comically called Merkin Muffley. Question 8. On which classic game show might you have heard Can I Have a Pee Please, Bob? Well, that came from Blockbusters, which had its first run from 83 to 93. 2 questions to go. In TV and film, in which fictional town was the sitcom Dad's Army set? Well, it was the town of Walmington-on-Sea, which is fictionally in West Kent. Last question on TV and film, question 10. Bill Murray plays successful TV executive Frank Frost in which modern take on A Christmas Carol? Well, that was Scrooged, which was released back in 1988. So that's the 10 questions for TV and film, 12 points available. Just take a note of those, but we'll mark the next 2 rounds now before we have a little total and go to a break. And round 2 was food and drink. The first question was, oysters Kilpatrick is a dish best associated with which country? Well, that is Australia. And generally, oysters Kilpatrick is oysters with streaky bacon. Question 2, a woo-woo is a cocktail of cranberry juice, peach schnapps and which other spirit? Well, that is vodka. Question 3, again for 1 point. Autumn King, Figaro and Sam Valerie are all varieties of carrots. They are all carrots. Question 4, what is the main seasoning of goulash, one of the national dishes of Hungary? Well, that is paprika. Then question 5, for 1 point, which MasterChef presenter was formerly a greengrocer? Well, that was Greg Wallace. For 1 point. But then we do have the bonus question after that for 2 points. And the bonus question was, how old is this presenter? 57, 8 or 9? Well, Greg Wallace is 57 years old. So 2 points if you got that. Back to the single point ones. Question 6 for 1 point. What is the main ingredient in the Eastern European soup borscht? That is beetroot. Beetroot is the answer there. Question 7, from which city do gumbo and jambalaya originate? Well, they originate from New Orleans. Both very similar dishes, but gumbo has the rice separate, and jambalaya is more of a stew, cooked with the rice. 1 point for that one. Question 8, Heston Blumenthal's restaurant in Bray holds 3 Michelin stars, but what is it called? Well, it's called the Fat Duck. The Fat Duck. Question 9. How many standard bottles of champagne fit in a Nebuchadnezzar? The answer to that is 20 bottles. So 15 litres, 20 bottles in a Nebuchadnezzar. And the final question in food and drink, which fast food franchise has the largest number of restaurants in the world? Well, that is Subway. Subway, which has got around about 44,000 franchise restaurants in the world. If you said McDonald's, well, that's just about 39,000. And as a comparison, Starbucks coffee chain has just around 31,000. So the answer there was Subway. So that brings us to the end of the round food and drink. So again, 12 points available there, and that's the original 12 from TV and film. Keep a total of how we're doing. But then we'll mark the final round now before we go to a break. The final round was Christmas number ones. And the first one there from 1972, well, that was Jimmy Osmond for The Long-Haired Lover from Liverpool. Jimmy Osmond's Long-Haired Lover from Liverpool. And that was recorded when Jimmy Osmond was just 9 years old. Next question, question 2, RATM KRTNO, that was Rage Against the Machine, Killing in the Name of, from 2009, which kept the X Factor's Joe McElderry off the top spot. Question 3, 1988, that's Cliff Richard, Mistletoe and Wine, back in 1988, that was his 99th single. Question 4 for 1 point, 1963, that's The Beatles with I Want to Hold Your Hand, The Beatles and I Want to Hold Your Hand. Again, for 1 point, question 5, Queen, Bohemian Rhapsody was number 1 in 1975. Queen, Bohemian Rhapsody, that's worth 1 point. We do have the bonus question related to that, though. What other year did this have the Christmas number 1 slot? Well, it was also number 1 in 1991. 1991. It's worth noting as well that these Christmas number 1s ran into the next year as well. So in theory, Bohemian Rhapsody has been number 1 in 4 different years. 4 different years. So 2 points there if you got 1991. Back to question 6 for 1 point. That's The Human League with Don't You Want Me from 1981. 1971, the Christmas number 1 was Benny Hill with Ernie, the fastest milkman in the West. Benny Hill with Ernie, the fastest milkman in the West. Question 8, 1987's Christmas number 1 was Pet Shop Boys with Always on My Mind. Always on My Mind. There's been versions released previously by Brenda Lee and Elvis, amongst others. Question 9, number 1 in 1996, Spice Girls with Two Become One. Two Become One by the Spice Girls. It's worth noting as well they had number 1 Christmas 96, 97 and 98, 3 years running. And the last question, question 10, Christmas number 1 in 1984 was, of course, Band-Aid with Do They Know It's Christmas. At the time, Bob Geldof had a cautious hope that it would raise £70,000, but eventually selling nearly 12 million copies. So that brings us to the end of the marking of the first 3 rounds of the quiz. 36 points available in total there. What we'll do now is we'll have a quick 5-minute break, and that'll give you time to, like I say, go and grab a drink, bite to eat, let the dog out, stretch your legs, whatever you need to do. But then we'll come back and reconvene, do the final 2 rounds. The chat box is open as well if you want to write down your scores or any other comments. That's always good to see. But for the moment, we'll have a quick 5-minute break, and we'll see you after that for the remaining 2 rounds in the quiz. Okay, so that's the 5-minute break over. Hope you had time to suitably refreshed, have a stretch. Nice to see some comments as well coming in, some good scores appearing there, which is always good, but still a couple more rounds to go, so all could change. So without further ado, let's move on to round 4, which this week is a picture round. And in this you'll see some 10 pictures of celebrities, slightly obscured. All you have to do is guess the celebrity. 1 point for each one, and there is a bonus question as well in the middle worth 2. So again, 12 points available. So let's start with picture 1. Very simple question. Who is that? Now, there will be a minute's thinking time at the end of this, and I will put a summary sheet up of all 10 of the pictures. But if you do want to take a bigger picture, then that's absolutely fine. Take a little screen grab now, you can always come back to it. But who is that? That's enough thinking time there on question 1. Move on to question 2. Once again, simple question. Who is that? So quite quick fire this, just to keep it moving along. Like I say, there will be a summary sheet with a picture of all 10 at the end. Or take a screen grab on your phone if you want to be slightly bigger. Moving on though, picture 3. Simple question again. Who is that behind the hat and beard? Who is that? Moving on, we get to question 4. Again, one simple question. Who is that? As ever, if you're unsure, then either take a picture on your phone, screen grab on your laptop. There will be a minute's thinking time at the end with a summary of all 10 pictures. So these are all worth 1 point, the basic pictures, but question 5 coming up will be worth 1, but there will be a bonus question after that for 2 points. So again, 12 points available in this round, 12 points again in the final round, so 24 points still available in the quiz. So let's have a look at picture 5. There's picture 5 once again. Who is that? So that's question 5 for 1 point. Who is that? And after question 5, for 1 point, we do have the bonus question. And the bonus question still relates to that same picture.
Ho, 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 ho! Merry Christmas!
And the question for that is, how tall is that celebrity? How tall is that celebrity? Now, we'll give you 5 centimetres either way if you're measuring in centimetres, or 2 inches either way if you're measuring in inches. So how tall is that celebrity? 2 points for that. So we move back on to the single point questions though, which is question 6 for 1 point. Question 6, who is that behind the hat and the beard? Just 1 point for that, question 6, only the bonus one worth 2 points. Which takes us to question 7, or picture 7. Once again, who is that? Just 3 more questions after this in the picture round. And question 8, who is that? 1 point again. And that brings us on to the penultimate question on the picture round, question 9 of 10. Once again, simple question, who is that? And then the last question here on the picture round, question 10. Again, one simple question, who is that? So that brings us to the end of the picture round. What I'll do is I'll now put a summary picture of all 10, including the bonus one as well. So 11 pictures there for you to look at on your screen. And we'll give you a minute's thinking time just to finalise any answers there before we move on to our 5th and final round. So we'll just have, I won't have a timer on the screen because it'll get in the way. So I'll just put some music on for a minute, and then in a minute's time we'll come back and we'll do round 5. Okay, so that's the minute's thinking time over there with the pictures round. Hopefully you got an answer for all those celebrities. But now we'll move on to the 5th and final round of the quiz, which as ever is general knowledge. But this week it is Christmas general knowledge. And question 1 is, alphabetically, which of Santa's reindeers comes first? Alphabetically, which of Santa's reindeer comes first? So as per all the other rounds, there'll be a minute's thinking time at the end. But at the end of this one, we'll mark these last 2 rounds before we get an idea of the final scores and see who's won the quiz. As ever, if you're unsure of anything, then just do jot it down on the side of your paper. We can come back to it in that thinking time. But that's question 1. Question 2. The Australian external territory of Christmas Island is in which ocean? The Australian external territory of Christmas Island is in which ocean? So that's question 2 here in Christmas General Knowledge. And moving on, we have question 3. Driving Home for Christmas was written during a car journey back to which town? Driving Home for Christmas was written during a car journey back to which town? So as ever, if you're unsure of these, just jot them down. You can always come back to them at the end, or it's always worth a guess. Question 4. For 1 point, which famous scientist who developed the 3 laws of motion was born on Christmas Day in 1642? Which famous scientist who developed the 3 laws of motion was born on Christmas Day in 1642? 1 point for that. Which takes us on to question 5, which is 1 point, but we'll have a bonus question for 2 points related to it. But question 5 is, which monarch made the first royal Christmas broadcast? Which monarch made the first royal Christmas broadcast? That's for 1 point. So that's for 1 point, but we obviously do have a bonus question after that.
Ho, 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 ho! Merry Christmas!
And there's Santa bringing in his bonus question for 2 points. Which year was this first broadcast? Again, we'll give you a point if you get the decade right, or 2 for the exact year. This is the broadcast we mentioned in question 5. Which year was this first broadcast? A point for the decade, 2 points if you get the exact year. If you're unsure, just make a little note on the paper. We'll come back to that. We can in the minutes thinking time at the end. But we'll move back on to the single point questions. Question 6 in Christmas General Knowledge. In the song, The 12 Days of Christmas, how many drummers drummed? In the song, The 12 Days of Christmas, how many drummers drummed? As ever, if you're not sure, it's always worth a guess on these. 1 point for that, though. Question 6 for 1 point. And question 7. How many tips do traditional snowflakes have? How many tips do traditional snowflakes have? That's question 7. Just 3 more questions remaining in this round and the quiz as a whole. So question 8. In which city's suburbs do the McAllister family live in Home Alone? In which city's suburbs do the McAllister family live in Home Alone? Just two more questions in this round and the quiz as a whole. Question 9 in Christmas General Knowledge. Which celebrity won the first ever Strictly Come Dancing back in December 2004? Which celebrity won the first ever Strictly Come Dancing back in December 2004? And that brings us on to the final question, question 10 in this round, the final question of the round, final question of the quiz. Finish this iconic line from It's a Wonderful Life. Every time a bell rings, an angel gets his something. Finish this line from It's a Wonderful Life. Every time a bell rings, an angel gets his... Simply fill in the end of that iconic line. So that brings us to the end both of this round and the quiz as a whole. We'll now have a minute's thinking time just to get some answers finalised for both the picture round and general knowledge before we come back to mark those last two. We'll then add those totals to your halfway point score as well and get an idea of final scores and who's won the quiz. But in the short term, we'll just have a minute on the clock for final answers and we'll be back after that for marking. A minute on the clock, starting now. So that concludes the minute's thinking time there at the end of the general knowledge round. Hopefully you've got answers in for all your questions as well as any on the picture round you're unsure of. Because what we'll do now is mark those final two rounds, add them to your first half scores to get an idea of total scores and who's won. So let's have a look at that picture round. Let's see what the answers were there. The first picture we had, well, that was Jose Mourinho. Jose Mourinho. Picture 2, that is Dame Maggie Smith, who's 86 years old. That's 2 years older than the film Snow White. 3 was Ed Sheeran. That's Ed Sheeran lurking behind there, who had an estimated worth last year of £220 million. Question 4, maybe the trickiest one in the group, that is the MP for Tottenham since 2000. That is David Lammy. 1 point for that. Question 5, again for 1 point. Behind the beard and hat there is Danny DeVito. So 1 point for Danny DeVito. There was a bonus question though there for 2 points, which was how tall is Danny DeVito? And we give you 2 inches either way, or 5 centimetres. He is 4'10". 4'10". So if you said 4 foot 8, 9, 10, 11 or 5 foot, or 142 centimetres to 152 centimetres, then you get the 2 points. He is 4'10", 147 centimetres. 2 points for that. Back to the single point ones though. 1 point for question 6. That is Paula Radcliffe. Paula Radcliffe behind there. Question 7 again for 1 point. Behind hat and beard is Hugh Dennis. That's Hugh Dennis. Question 8, behind there is Letitia Dean, the actress who's played Sharon in EastEnders right back from the start in 1985. 2 to go, question 9, that is Gary Barlow behind there. Gary Barlow behind the beard and hat in question 9. And then the last one in the round, question 10, behind there is Olivia Coleman. Olivia Coleman. So, possible 12 points available there, if you take a note of those, and we'll move on to the fifth and final round for marking. Fifth and final round was general knowledge. First question, alphabetically, which of Santa's reindeer comes first? That is Blitzen. Blitzen. Question 2, the Australian territory of Christmas Island is in which ocean? That is in the Indian Ocean, Christmas Island is, in the Indian Ocean, with a population just short of 2,000 people. Question 3, Driving Home for Christmas was written during a car journey back to which town? Well, that was by Chris Rea, driving back to Middlesbrough, and it's based on a journey him and his wife made in a snowy 1978, way before the song was released. Question 4, which famous scientist who developed the three laws of motion was born on Christmas Day in 1642? Well, that was Isaac Newton. Isaac Newton. Question 5, for 1 point, which monarch made the first royal Christmas broadcast? Well, that was King George V. King George V made the first broadcast. 1 point for that. We do have the bonus question, though, for 2 points. Which year was this first broadcast? We'll give you a point if you get the decade, 2 for the exact year. Well, that was a radio broadcast then, obviously, back in 1932. 1932. So you get a point for the 30s, 2 points if you manage to say 1932 exactly. Back to the single point answers though. Question 6, in the song The 12 Days of Christmas, how many drummers drummed? Well, that was 12 drummers drumming. To go with the 11 pipers, 10 lords, 9 ladies, etc, etc. Question 7, how many tips do traditional snowflakes have? They traditionally have 6 tips. 6 tips on a snowflake. Question 8, in which city's suburbs did the McAllister family live in Home Alone? Well, they lived in the suburbs of Chicago. And that was they were stuck there when his family go on vacation to Paris. Question 9, which celebrity won the first ever Strictly Come Dancing in December 2004? Well, that was Natasha Kaplinsky. Natasha Kaplinsky with her partner, bad boy Brendan Cole. And the final question finished this iconic line from It's a Wonderful Life. Every time a bell rings, an angel gets his, and the answer is wings. Wings. Every time a bell rings, an angel gets his wings. So 12 points available there as well, and 12 points for the previous round, so 24 for those last two. If you add that to your existing scores, we'll have a final total of what you've got. If you want to pop that in the comments, etc., we can see who's won. So that concludes this Christmas quiz. I hope you enjoyed it, and who knows, maybe it'll be back soon again. Do pop your comments and scores, like I say, in the chat box. They're always good to read. Lastly, let me wish you all a very Merry Christmas, and here's to a joyful and more normal 2022. Thank you.